us? How do we reach those people?
Two responses to that, Lennon. But the first one, I'm gonna ask you this. There's one particular product that you will find, even if you go to the very deep of rural areas, on the African continent or even the global south, if you will. What is that product?
Data?
You're such a metropolitan youth. Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
You will find a bottle of Coca-Cola wherever you go.
Not Pepsi?
Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola. So it's not a paid ad. The reason I'm saying this is we really need to give a rethink around partnerships.
Okay.
We really need to think about partnerships, not just in terms of the programs and conferences we do, but partnerships in terms of governance and management. And sometimes what we don't find often is partnerships with institutions or people that are not within the governance space. And that's one of the points that are very critical. What I hope to see is actually maybe on this podcast, somebody from the engineering space who comes in to say, if we're going to have a discussion around renewable resources, I think this is from the technical side, how we look at things. We need to think of partnerships with stakeholders that are not within our radius. That's the first one. But the second response to that is there are things that have worked traditionally. I think acknowledgement of traditional authorities within some of the work that we're doing in international development, that is critical. We leave out traditional chiefs and the engagements we're having. And these are people that have the convening power in very remote areas where we don't have access, or even if we do have access, I probably
ask you, who are you?
Yes, but if the APRM partners with a local chief in a certain rural area, and we go through that chief to say this is a program we're having at continental level, I think that could be fantastic and could revolutionize our governance space. And lastly, still using radio. Radio and traditional media is still a very widely consumed method of communication or engagement in certain spaces. And there is maybe an idea back to you to have some of the podcast or even the shows airing on radio to reach out to people that traditionally do not have access.
No, I like what you said, and I'll speak to our producer here. That now, what about Agenda 2063? Another, and I've been asking you a lot of questions around policy.
Yes.
I've picked up that it's not widely known. But if you say SDGs, which of course SDGs and Agenda 2063 are connected, what would you advise all the institutions of the African Union?
True. So before I served, or while I served as African Union's Youth Ambassador for Peace for Southern Africa, I also worked largely within the political space with the political foundation. And I'm bringing this to light because I think there's a lot that could be done in terms of politics. There is not having resources to do developmental work or even to be present in majority of the member states. There's also just pure absence.
Okay.
Not having resources is one thing.
Whose absence?
I'm getting to that point.
Okay.
Not being available is also another thing. To bring that point home, I was in, there's a place called Kure, about 75 km from Niger's capital in Niamey. Okay. The place has been very famed for some of the terrorist activities and somewhat unsafe. Okay. Do you know that about 80 km away from Niger's capital, there is no single sign of the African Union, not even an African map with stars like we're having here. What I saw there was a poster of UNDP and a project that they ran there.
Okay.
Now, if you go to an average citizen in that community and you ask them about the African Union, they're not going to know about the African Union because maybe we don't have the resources to run a project there, but can we be visible and actually create or even share more information about what the organization is doing? And I think there is more to do in terms of even sharing knowledge on what the African Union does, Sometimes you sit with people who have expectations of certain AU organs. What does the African Union do? It's not even the responsibility of the African Union to begin with. So it works both ways, both in the negative way, but in the positive way. There are responsibilities that should fall on regional economic mechanisms and regional mechanisms like SADC, like ECOWAS, like CENSAT. But we don't communicate enough to say the mandate of the African Union ends here. From here, it's a responsibility of the regional mechanism. From here, it's a responsibility of the member state. So there is more to do in terms of sensitizing people to the role that the African Union plays. And then finally, I will say this point again and again, governance. We need to get governance right. The reason why people would know more about UNDP than they would about the African Union's development agency, which is NEPAD, is because UNDP has been visible in providing certain services
To people.
to people, that perhaps NEPAD is not engaging in. So if there are no resources to do certain projects, at least be present. Have people know about what the institution does. So yes, there is more to do in terms of creating awareness and also just being there beyond the perception that people have, and reality is perception of the African Union, the African continent is not great. It's not a great perception, and there's more intentionality that must be put into revamping that image.
Yeah. No, in conclusion, I just want to thank you for coming to this podcast of ours that we're trying to champion in making sure that we're visible, like you said. But the last shot I'm asking now, what's next in your professional career? Are you going to continue serving the African Union that you at some point didn't want to? Are you going to the UN? What next then?
I think I'll part on what one of the very popular Africans would say. His name is Brian Kagoro. And he says, young people must normalize saying power. I am going to go for power.
That's good.
I think that's in the long haul. For now, at the moment, I've been traveling. I did mention going to different places. And the reason I do that is you cannot be a student of humanities and social sciences and not take genuine interest in people. And before this, I think before 2 or 3 years, I was one of the coordinators of a regional program that worked in about 48 countries.
Okay.
It's different when you travel for work and when you travel to meet people. There is so much I've had to learn, including the example I gave of what's happening 80 kilometers from the capital in Niger. They took a short-term career break while the past 3 years have been great professionally, I think they've also been very taxing on myself as a person socially. So I'm doing that, and then hopefully going into my PhD next year.
Lovely. So. Miss Cynthia, former African Union ambassador for Peace for Southern Africa, she shared really great insights. I just want to thank you so much for coming to this podcast, and I hope you continue working with the African Union. Would like to see you in the high echelons of power.
Thank you for having me, and I like that you said working with and not for the African Union. So I still do the best I can from wherever I am. Thank you. Thanks for having me.